Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose.
Welcome to Pain with a Purpose. Today we have Cait Vogel, right? Season 1, episode 12. Definitely appreciate you coming out. Very long drive for you. Little bit of confusion getting here.
Just a tad.
But we definitely appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
I know that we have a lot to cover and we can't talk about everything because if we did, at some point people, if they were listening, would just drop off like flies.
Mm-hmm.
But what type of pain have you been through in your life? Like, what has that looked like? Let's talk about that, and then we'll jump into all the other stuff.
Okay. Well, you said we didn't have that much time, so I don't know how
We
much
might have
pain
to,
we
yeah.
want to get into.
Well, listen, we can edit it, and we'll just do like bullet.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I should start by saying I'm an emotional person, so if I start crying, if you've seen Mean Girls, you know the
Mhm.
girl that's like, I just have a lot of feelings.
I was going to say Regina George.
I could be Regina George too, but definitely the girl with a lot of feelings. But yeah, I didn't get sober because my life was great. Obviously, there was a lot of pain into that.
Mhm.
And honestly, I know that we had just briefly talked about this, but getting sober wasn't like a straight, like up, everything's better. I've been through a lot more in sobriety than I think I had drinking. So there's a lot to unpack here,
Yeah.
Chris.
And I think it's a really cool point to talk about because I think at least I would have a perception of like, okay, Cait stopped drinking. Like her life's great. And that's just not my story either. That the truth of the matter is that I put down the drink and the drug and my life got exponentially harder.
Yep.
On paper, it looked great.
Oh yeah.
But internally there was days where I was just dying inside.
Yeah.
Whether it was external pain that was kind of happening or stuff in my life that was happening, or I didn't get the promotion that I wanted.
Okay.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool point to talk about because a lot of people probably think that, oh, she just finally got sober
Yeah.
and her life is just magical. Look.
Exactly.
So what did it look like? Like why did it get worse?
Why did it get worse? Let's start with the beginning. We're not
Let's
going
go
to
all
go
the way back.
too far
Okay.
back, but
I
give
know
you.
we had a lot to talk about, so I figured let's start like chapter
You're like
5.
chapter 5. I gotta just
Yeah.
give you some background here.
Mhm.
So I'm from Delco, number 1.
I was trying to leave that out.
Yep, Delco Pride. I got my
We'll
hoops
put that
on.
up. We'll
You
put a
can't see
hashtag.
them under the headphones.
Are they what, gold rings that have Delco inside of it?
No, just hoops. Hold my hoops, you know? But yeah, I always truly start my story by saying these 2 things that qualified me to becoming an alcoholic is 1, I'm from Delco. 2, my parents met in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Really?
So I am the product of 2 sober alcoholics. So I kind of always knew that I would potentially have an issue with alcohol, but also you have to keep in mind, my parents were sober. Like I grew up in a household, there was no alcohol.
Wow.
And if there was alcohol, it was like Coors Light in the, I don't know, garage refrigerator that was like most likely from 6 years ago from a party they had for friends. But yeah, and I had a great childhood. I can't deny anything about my childhood being amazing. I feel like the hardest thing that I went through was my parents getting divorced when I was 11. But it's 2024. Everybody gets divorced. And in my family, everybody's been divorced, remarried. We're a big Delco Irish Catholic family. And yeah, I started drinking when I was 11 years old. And I think we were going to a St. Dennis dance, which probably means nothing to you, Philly boy, but
I've heard of them.
Kelly will know all about them. So I was with a couple girlfriends and we stole some Smirnoff Ice from somebody's fridge and I drank it and we hid it in my closet before going to the St. Dennis dance. And then when I got picked up from the dance, I got home and the bottles were like laid out and displayed. And I remember every single person got like a slap on the wrist. I was grounded for like 3 months. And part of my punishment is that my dad made me go to AA meetings with him.
At 11.
At 11. No, I was no stranger. Mind you, like I'm the kid coloring in the back of it.
You were brought up.
Yeah. So one of his favorite stories is literally like when I was 7 years old, he was at his home group, which I was coloring in the back of, and they were asking for people for volunteers for treasurer, and nobody was volunteering. And I was 7 years old sitting in the back, and I was like, my dad will do it. So I volunteered him for service. And then the next time I drank, I don't know if it was the exact next time, probably the third time or whatever. Somebody had a bottle of like a water bottle like this that they were just stealing alcohol from their parents' liquor cabinet and left it under like a bed. So it became grain alcohol. I chugged it and I ended up with alcohol poisoning, and I ended up in the hospital getting my stomach pumped. And truly, like, I always like to tell that story because that's how my drinking went. Like, nothing bad happened the first time, the second time. Third time, I ended up in the hospital. Like, the type of drunk that I was like playing Russian roulette. You never knew what you were going to get. And it also didn't matter to me. Like, I could have 2 beers one night and be completely fine. I could have 2 beers the next time and be completely blackout drunk. It was
really
crazy. It was crazy. And yeah, I grew up, like I said, my parents were divorced. So my mom moved out to Chester County, which I thought was like the middle of nowhere. And my dad still lived in Havertown. And I remember my dad got a breathalyzer when I was in high school. And he always told me, he's like, it's not for you. It's for your brother, because you're like obviously drunk every time you're drunk. So
there's no question. We know.
No question. But I always tried to like skirt around it, of like, I would pretend to sleep at friends' houses. And if I was sleeping at friends' houses, I was always trying to get drunk from a very young age. I was really, really, really bad early on, which I feel like isn't the norm. Like, I wasn't one of those kids that like, went to college and then became really bad. Like, I was bad from when I started drinking.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drinking every day. Like, I wasn't in high school, like drinking, but I can tell you I had to go to, rehab after work when I was in high school. Like, some of my punishments were, going to these outpatient groups doing this, but they were well-deserved. Like, I was bad. And I'm sure your wife can tell you some stories from back in the day.
So we haven't gotten there yet, but after obviously we shoot the podcast, I'll go home and be like, what was really going on?
Oh, yeah. She was there for, I think, one of the worst nights. I think I went to the Carol homecoming dance, and it was really bad. There was other like dances, like, I don't know. It's not normal for a 13, 14-year-old girl to throw a cinder block through their ex-boyfriend's windshield and wake up in the post office, like crazy.
All right, so the first part, maybe. the back part, not at all.
No, not at all. But I was just like a crazy drunk. I also feel like, talking about my childhood, I was a nerd. My screen name was K9Girl99. I had braces 3 times.
At AIM?
At AIM. At AOL.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of a nerd. And then in the 7th grade, this girl transferred in from, public school. I was a Catholic school girl. She was like the cool girl. And I started hanging out with them. And I went from hanging out at like these nice houses in Media down to, I was going into like Deep Delco, like Briarcliff. My parents were like dropping me off at baseball fields. I was like, drop me off a block down the street. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the drinking was. And I mean, I could find it anywhere I went. I also lived down the shore every summer. So that was a big party town. I was like Sea Isle's little queen of having a new bathing suit every day and also being blackout drunk every night.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't great. And there was times throughout my teenage years where I would do something so horrible, and I was a people pleaser to my core. And I didn't want to hurt people. I didn't like feeling like that, but I also just wanted to be normal. That's all I ever wanted. I just wanted to be normal. And being told from the jump that you might have a drinking problem when you're like 12 years old, it really put me in like a weird situation. So I won't get too much into it, but that story that I just told you about the cinder block, like,
listen, forgetting the cinder block, that's definitely might have just been a 13-year-old girl thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Alcohol may or may not have played a part, but I did an episode the one time with a good buddy of Steve, or my buddy Steve.
Okay.
And I don't really usually think about it, but I remember, so I'm not an only child, but I am, if that makes sense.
Same.
So, I lived at home with my grandparents, my mom, and it was just me, but there was always a liquor cabinet.
Yeah.
And we always had Tanqueray, and there was always vodka, but for some reason I like had to even it out. So one night, long story short, I always went for the Tanqueray because like they never touched it.
Yeah, who would?
I did. And I would mix it with like lemon Gatorade. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But I might have been in 5th, 6th, 7th grade,
Yes.
drinking in my room by myself.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the big Gatorades, the small ones, but regardless, like straight liquor at that age, drinking for effect, looking back, that's not normal.
That's definitely not normal.
So that's how I know that I was an alcoholic back then. And we'll talk about like why I know and that I'm still an alcoholic today, stone cold sober.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting point.
It's
not normal.
It's definitely not normal. And I feel like you can relate to this, but being a mom now, I am terrified of those teenage years and the stuff that I put my parents to, like put them through. Sorry. Obviously, I knew it was bad at the time, but looking back now,
could you imagine?
I can't imagine. Like they were my biggest supporters, no matter what, and I just know like how much pain I caused them. And I just like, my dad, my parents are both still sober with some hiccups along the way, but I'll go to meetings with my dad and I laugh because every time he has to announce that his daughter is here and sober. But I'm like, he is just so proud. Like he is. And I didn't get sober to make him proud. Like, but it makes me happy to know that like, as much as I hate it being pulled into those AA meetings and like being sent to rehab after work, we're lucky enough to know that there was a place to go for people like us. Like a lot of people don't have that. And that is sad and scary.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, so I didn't get sober until much later, right? And didn't even know about the rooms until much later.
Okay.
But regardless, imagine like how that makes him feel saying that.
Yes.
I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. By the way, my daughter's here and she's sober. That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. So whatever, there goes the ADD. Like I'll definitely digress a few times.
Me too. Keep me on track here.
So, moving through a little bit.
Yep. Moving through.
So eventually you turned 14.
Yep.
And you got sober at 14, or when did you get sober? Like, what did that look like?
I got sober at 21 and a half. And I like to say that because I only made it 6 months legally drinking.
I was going to say, are we still counting half years?
We are. Okay. We are. Those 6 months. Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit. It didn't get much better. It was a lot of ups and downs. I went to St. Joseph's University. I followed an ex-boyfriend there who was like my high school sweetheart. And then I got kicked out of St. Joe's. The casual aggravated assault charges, just being crazy, And there was like ups and downs of like, I stopped drinking. Like I said, I would get so drunk and do stupid stuff and feel horrible about it. And I would like stay sober. Like I'm talking months at a time.
Really?
Yes. So I wouldn't do anything, but then I would always get pulled back in, whether it was weed or I got involved with cocaine and, I worked in the restaurant industry. So it was a lot of chaos over the years. And, I remember I was about to turn 21 and I knew I was going to drink. I had my party planned. I was like, I told you I was the youngest out of my class of friends.
Yeah.
So they had all been 21 long before I had. So I was the last one. And I was like, we're going to AC, all the stuff. And I knew I was going to drink. I knew I wanted to drink for my 21st birthday. So my dad tried to actually scare me straight. And I'm going to talk about somebody that's in the program that I feel like you might know, but my dad took me out to dinner with this kid, and I'm not going to give out his name, but he got into a horrible car accident years ago. So this was 14 years ago? And I went out to dinner, and my dad brings this mystery guest who is wearing a full halo. He has a walker. He's my age, and he was he was drunk and driving.
Oh my God. Did you know him prior?
No. And I'm just sitting at dinner, like watching this kid. He can't even put food in his mouth. Like he's like basically handicapped from this accident.
Listen, I got to stop and give Dad a shout out because I don't know like how I would react honestly with my daughters. But kudos to him because he was just trying whatever he could.
He was trying. He was pulling out all the tricks.
Can't say he didn't try.
No. Yeah. A for effort, Dad.
All right. So he brought this random boy to dinner.
There was a woman too. So it wasn't just a girl or such a man.
But regardless, this guy was like definitely just in a car accident, still very much in the healing process at dinner.
Yep.
Okay.
At dinner. So that was supposed to scare me. It didn't. It was really hard to scare me. And yeah, fast forward. I like I said, I got kicked out of St. Joe's. I started going to Westchester. I had pockets of friends. So I had my Westchester friends, my St. Joe's friends. I worked at a restaurant down the street that's no longer there. It's called the Paddock. That was like the height of my drinking and drugging. And I had different groups of people. So when I would piss one off or like embarrass myself, I would just hop around. And it got exhausting, to be honest with you. And I didn't feel good. I did not feel good. Now, backtrack. I need to tell you that I said I come from a big Delco Irish Catholic family. And at this point, multiple people in my family had gotten sober. And kind of like always just like...
pressure just building.
It's building, right? And being the people pleaser I am, I'm like, do I do this? And I did. I would go to meetings and lie and say like I had a month sober and collect the coin and come home and show my parents. But my brother was sober before I was. And, you know, he kind of just like watched me struggle. And the end of my drinking, like there was much worse things that happened. When I got kicked out of St. Joe's, I also had to go to jail for the incident that I was in. So I went to Chester County for 21 days, which again, like looking at me, people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, no, I was a completely different person back then. I was insane. And you get it. Like,
well, that's the point, right? And that's like that's like the period at the end of the podcast, right? Where it's like that, this is what recovery really can look like.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's a reason why I don't look, talk, or present the way I did when I walked in, you know, God willing, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. But I didn't know you were a felon, so that's cool.
I mean, the felony got dropped. That's how I got to jail. I had to go for 20. They were trying to make an example out of me. Granted, it wasn't a great situation. I see that face, Chris.
Did you?
My lawyer got it dropped down to a misdemeanor because it was good lawyer,
Yeah.
good man. Also, father paid for. Like, again, parents, what I put them through, what they did for me. So fast forward, I went to jail. I got kicked out of school. Like, there's things much worse that could have been my bottom. And it wasn't that. Yeah. I went on a vacation with my family. Every year we would go to Jamaica or Turks and Caicos. It was like our family trip. And my dad had asked me not to drink on the trip that we went on. I went on the trip with my stepmom, who's sober, my dad, my brother, his sponsor, and me. And I was like hammered the entire time.
You didn't mean that for real, Dad, right?
I was like,
it's not that
they'll
big of a
never
deal.
know.
Yeah.
And I, you know, had some fun, a lot of fun, too much fun. And I woke up and it was the last day at the resort. And have you ever been to Jamaica?
No.
Okay. Well, their saying is like, no problem, man. Like they just say that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't think you need to go to Jamaica to know that one. Yeah.
I was like, wait, was I not allowed to say that?
No. Yeah.
Yes. So that was their motto.
Yeah.
That was not the case with me. I woke up the last day at the resort. None of the Jamaicans would even talk to me. They would all like look away. I was like, what did I do?
There's a problem, man.
There's a big problem, big problem. And I got home from that trip and like, mind you, there's been some stuff that had going on, like keying cars, driving drunk, all this stuff. And my dad called me and he said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And any other time I would spiral and be like, I'm not talking to him. What does he want to talk about? I went to his house and he basically said, you're going to rehab or we're cutting you off. And like, it makes it sound like I'm a trust fund baby. I'm not. We're middle class Delco, maybe upper middle class. But I just, at that point, was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I remember I just broke down, like sobbing. And I was on the phone with Miramont because that's where I was supposed to go. And I think he was more shocked than I was because I was like, okay, just sobbing. And I was on the phone with Miramont. I remember the intake person was like, you know, you don't have to come. Like, this is your free will. And I was like, I know. And I was just sobbing. And I swear, I went to rehab. Everybody hated me. They put me on the detox wing. I was like, why? I hadn't drank since Jamaica. It was like 3 days. And I was on the detox wing, like chipper, happy as hell, you know.
Oh, yeah. You were not popular.
No, not popular at all. And then, yeah, I had been... That was March 15th, 2011, and I've been sober since. I've been one of those people that was lucky enough to go to treatment and get sober and stay sober. But yeah, life got crazier after that. I got involved with somebody in rehab who looked like Aaron Carter, and I was like, this is my guy. This is it. This is where this is the love story.
Yep.
And
this is going to work.
This is going to work, right? And we got out of treatment, and he was just like really sleepy all the time, you know,
and nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing out of the ordinary. And I found out he was still shooting heroin, which, by the way, that was never my thing. And I have to tell you, when I got into rehab, I was shocked that heroin was as big of a drug.
Yeah.
as it is. Like, I literally thought it was just from the movie Ray. I was like, what?
Mm-mm.
What are you guys doing?
You had a culture shock real quick.
Yes, real quick. Because I'm just like a raging alcoholic, drug addict. But it didn't work out with the rehab romance, sadly.
You know what, though? Side note.
Tell me.
And I'm sure you have a different thought on Dad today. But like when it was all going down, probably thought completely different than now. You probably never did any of that stuff, maybe because of how strict he was, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
But not saying that my parents weren't strict, but at the end of the day, like my mom and my grandparents weren't sober. They were just normal, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
So they really didn't know what they were looking for either. Like I know what I'm looking for at my daughter. You know, even there's behaviors now with my daughters where I'm like, we might have a problem.
See,
you know,
I need you to come over because I don't know what I'm looking for. I know how to. I mean,
no, you do.
Okay.
It's all the same. It's all the same. It's all the same pain. It's all the same manipulation, right?
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, when I got to a treatment center, I wasn't doing heroin.
Okay.
I was doing Percocet, but I was not doing heroin, and it was like, I got on the phone with my mom, and I was like, "You got to get me out of here."
Yeah.
I am not like these people,
right?
And then I come off of detox, right? And I'm just like them.
Yep.
You know, I didn't know that until I came back to treatment a few more times, but it was, you know, when I have something in my body, right? When you medicate me or you put me on like the detox med or whatever the case may be, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's when I wake up sober, I'm like, we got problems. We have like big problems.
Exactly.
And especially like, and you know, like the longer you stay sober, you're like, we got serious problems.
Serious problems. We have no like shield.
No.
Right? We got to feel everything.
Yep.
But back to your point, even when I went to rehab after work, when kids were talking about they were taking Percocet and all these other drugs, I was like, I always played the better than sign, like greater than, less than, greater than, less than. And I honestly was like, I don't need to be at rehab after work. These kids are doing drugs. I'm just drinking. I'm better than. And even when I first got sober, right? So things didn't work out with the rehab romance. And my brother handed me a big book and it was like, it's never too late to get right on the right path, which I started following in his footsteps and going to meetings. And at the time I was going to meetings where it was all young people. There was a meeting in Westchester called Fenarios. Have you heard?
I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah. So it was upstairs on a coffee shop and you could smoke in there. And I remember I was sitting in this meeting. I was in like, it was always packed every week. In the middle of the room, I was like, all right, I'm not in the back. I'm not like, you know, whatever. So I remember sitting in this meeting and I was like sitting there and it just ended everything with the rehab romance, was just binging Game of Thrones, not really doing nothing. Like I had nothing really going on. And the speaker spoke. I don't remember what they said. And I was sitting in the middle of the room and I raised my hand like this. Like nobody could see me because there's people in front of me. And the girl behind me had the audacity to like slap my hand up. And it went up and they called on me. And I don't even know what I said. But then, of course, it's like newcomers. I'm like, everybody's swarming you. And that girl.
God forbid you ask for help and people actually show up.
Ew, you know? What is wrong with them, you know? But that girl ended up becoming my first sponsor.
The girl that hit your hand?
She was my first sponsor. I told you I'm an emotional little thing, but I get emotional when I talk about her. She played a very big part in my early sobriety. She was older than us. I was 21. And I say us because I met two other girls that were her sponsees. And people used to call us like the little ducklings that followed Mama Hen around. And she was like our mom. Like she took us to meetings. She was amazing. And she taught me so much in early sobriety because you have to remember, I'm 21 and a half, right? Like I'm still throwing in that half. But like all of my friends are still going to Atlantic City, posting all these cool pictures from the bar. They're going to the OD down in Sea Isle and like they're out dancing. I love dancing. And I remember being like, I can't go out dancing anymore. She's like, says who? And I was like, I don't know, AA. And she's like, no, like you can go out if you feel comfortable not drinking and being in a bar. She goes, I guarantee you'll dance better sober. And I did.
You had a really good sponsor because I was hoping that like you didn't go the opposite way.
Yes.
With it, because there's a lot of people, and I won't even just say just in AA, but just in recovery in general that are like, you know, the hot topics like people, places, and things, and you know, this, that, and the third. And it's like, I don't know. Like if we were saying AA, That's not what it says.
No.
It says actually in the book that's called Alcoholics Anonymous, it says I can go anywhere and do anything as long as I stay close to God and perform his work well.
Exactly.
But they're like, nah, you shouldn't go there. And it's like, well, who told you that?
Again, it was what, 2011? Like,
now, if I had 90 days, probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like today, if I want to go somewhere, I was just at a Phillies tailgate. It was a sober tailgate,
exactly.
right? Shout out Release Recovery, right? It was a great
shameless plug.
Yeah. You know the deal. But like I can do anything. And there was people drinking there.
Yeah.
It's not like me and everybody else in recovery were just like staring at it like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a different stigmatism, like not saying I have it harder than somebody that does heroin, because I don't think that's true. But like people aren't just recreationally shooting up heroin in the Phillies tailgate parking lot. I say it all the
time. They're not.
They're not.
Especially in 2024.
Yeah.
But there was never a time where anybody was really just recreational shooting heroin.
I was like, do you know something I don't?
But yeah, today it's scary out there. That's a whole nother episode. That's scary.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I think that's the thing. I was like, okay, alcohol is always going to be around. Do I feel like I'm in a good spot? Like if I had the worst day ever, I would not go out to a bar and go dancing. I would do something else. But if I wanted to have fun, yeah, I could go there. And I had a really good group of young people. And I think that's the thing too, is like my life looked a little bit different when I first got sober. Obviously, I would get like, we were just joking about this. And I say we because a lot of the people that I got sober with are still some of my best friends today.
I love that.
Yeah, which is awesome. But I had mentioned like the 3 girls that were, or the other 2 girls that were my sobriety sisters, I guess. One of them passed away, and like that sucks. And that's what happens, you know? Yeah. And I wish, like, I hate saying it. And I know how like my father feels now of like, okay, he just wanted to give this to me so badly because there is such a better way of life. So like, I don't know. We had strength in numbers. We would go out to like, we were Westchester people. So we would go out to Tekka, go dancing up there. And, you know, I always had a group of people and it was nice. And granted, like, I'm not going to lie, in the beginning of sobriety, when people would be like, do you want to go bowling? Do you want to go to the diner? I was like, ugh, gag. I want to go to HQ nightclub at Atlantic City. I want to be one of the bar dancers. I was like, not happening. Yeah.
But I also went bowling.
Yes. I said yes.
And you know what I mean? I never really ever wanted to go to the diner, either. But some of the best conversations I ever had were at a diner.
Yes.
Some of the hardest laughs I ever had.
Exactly.
About like the most dark, sick shit.
Yes.
That really shouldn't be said.
No.
We're at diners, but like we stayed sober.
Exactly.
You know, and like I wasn't causing harm. And like that's what it's all about.
Exactly. And like fast forward, right? I'm telling you, these people are still in my lives, right? So I have 2 best friends that one got sober 10 days before me. And the other one, oh God, I picked her up for a meeting. My sponsor made me. And I remember being like, I'm never going to hang out with this girl again. She was so just like out of it still. And I remember she pulled out like a full mirror in the middle of a meeting and was just doing her makeup. I was like, what? But they're still one of my best friends today. And we all have little girls 6 months apart. So like we're all moms now. And like these people have grown with me. And there's something to be said about the relationships and friendships that you have in sobriety versus the normal friendships, you know? It's even the same with relationships, to be honest. Like having been sober and dating, we'll get there. But both dating non-sober people and sober people, like as much as I didn't want to connect with somebody that was sober because I'm fearful, right? That somebody's going to relapse, or like there's always that option that's on the table. I relate to people that are sober more. I feel like it's a deeper connection, and I can say stuff like, I've been in jail, and they're like, cool, same, you know, versus somebody else is like, wait, what? And I'm like, sorry, just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true though, right? Like you said, 21 days, and I almost said, you snitched. You snitched on somebody.
Never.
But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
It's the same story with me, right? Like I remember sitting in treatment and being like, well, what about like this? Like you're telling me I can't drink if like my daughter's getting married? They're like, do you have a kid? And I'm like, no, I don't even got a girlfriend. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you have a point. And I'm like, well, what about like, I can't go down the shore and like drink on the beach anymore? They're like, it's November, dude. What are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, you got a point. Everybody in my wedding, right? Like all of my, my best man, my groomsmen, my best man, right? Everybody was in sobriety with the exception of my brother-in-law.
Yep.
I I too, right? One of my best men, Ryan Murphy, right, passed away.
It's horrible.
It's just like, I don't know. That's a whole thing too, right? Like how like desensitized I am a little bit.
Me too.
But yeah. I mean, like the life that I have today, and I'm sure you can relate, was nothing that I thought like my life was going to consist of.
No.
But it's so much fuller than I thought I wanted.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's the greatest game in town.
It really is. And I used to hate it because my dad would just give me all of the stuff from the big book of like cunning, baffling, and powerful. I'm like,
shut up. I know.
And then I went to meetings and I'm like, oh, this again, you know? But I remember him always saying life can be beyond your wildest dreams. And I just told you, my wildest dreams were being a bar dancer at HQ nightclub in Atlantic City, right? Dream bigger, sweetheart, And now, I mean, my life's not perfect by any means, but I'm really, really happy with the way that my life is now. I get to be a mom. I get to do social media, which I love.
What is that? What's social media? So we'll dive into it, right?
We will dive into that.
So yeah, social media.
You want to go into that?
Yeah,
Let's go into that. Let's go into that.
So you have a pretty big presence on Instagram.
That's really kind. I'm a micro influencer on my best
I don't know.
day.
I'm just starting off. Okay. You said that I was doing well. I was like,
you
you got a few more.
Good. Yeah.
Like, you got a few more than me, sure.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's walk through that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What did that look like early on? Like what was it just a thought? Like, let me just see what happens.
It was okay. So I got sober in 2011, right? A lot happened. And then I got married in 2017 to my ex-husband. And I loved wedding planning. And at the time, I had worked at QVC for a number of years, which is a whole other story. And then I went to Free People for a year. I got to work there. And I remember always being on social media and seeing these influencers and being jealous, to be honest, because I was the girl in high school that had the point and shoot camera, uploaded all of the pictures to web shots. Your wife will tell you this. Like I was known for,
I remember those girls.
Yeah, that was me.
Yep.
Not only that, I was like the girl that had the first pair of Uggs. Like I saw them on Cait Hudson in a movie and I Googled them. I don't even think it was like Ask Jeeves at the time, right? I asked Jeeves. I was like, what are these? My mom got me imported Ugg, sheepskin, fur, whatever, boots.
We just lost a single shot.
Oh, you need to change it?
No. Because I came right from the tailgate.
Oh,
whatever.
Okay.
It'll still be fine.
Perfect.
We'll edit that out. She broke the camera.
That's what happens, Too sassy.
All right, sorry.
No, you're good. But I basically was like always into fashion. I was always into taking pictures. And I was just like at Free People one day, like kind of like bouncing around the idea. And I remember my ex-husband was like, you need to get a hobby. Like he played a lot of video games and that was his thing. And I was like, I'm bored. Pay attention. He's like, get a hobby. And I was like, all right. So I did. I got a hobby, which I think he regretted a little bit at the time. Cause like I told you, it was like these big DSLR cameras. And I was like, so I need help.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to come take my picture. I know it's 20 degrees, but we're going to be
vlogging too?
I was not vlogging. At the time when I started, it was taking DSLR cameras and shooting pretty pictures in cool outfits and posting them on social media, which is so much easier when you live somewhere like California or Hawaii, somewhere warm.
Yeah. Picture
me in 20 degrees weather in Philadelphia, like ripping the coat off, pretending like my eyes are like not tearing up because it's so windy and cold. So I started doing it. And I'm not going to lie, Chris, like the person that I was when I first got sober was somebody who didn't know who they were. Like it's funny because you don't remember the stuff. But then when you have like newcomers come in and you're like, oh my God, like there's this girl who is a year sober right now. And I swear to God, she is me. Like the stuff that she tells me, like she gets anxiety over social situations. Like I would replay that stuff in my head. My confidence was not there. I didn't know who I was because I just was a chameleon for so long. I was like trying to be anything that anybody else wanted me to be that I had no idea who I was. And I really feel like getting into social media was my thing that made me happy. It brought me joy. And there were so many times where I was like, I need to quit. I can't do this. This is embarrassing. It's degrading. And like people yell at you. I remember people yelling at me when my ex-husband was taking pictures of me. And I was like, I hate this and all this stuff. And now I don't care. I'm like, what's up? Like.
Well, like people yelling at you on the street?
Yeah, people always, I'm like, we live in like Philadelphia, like haters gonna hate. But then you have girls too that are like, get it, girl. And I'm like, we love that energy, girls supporting girls. But yeah, I just started doing it. And then I got to a place where I just made friends on the internet, which is weird because you spend your whole life being like, don't talk to anybody in chat rooms. And like your parents being like, don't meet people on the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm like sliding into these DMs and I'm like, hey, I like that picture that you just posted. Where'd you get that top? You know? And then I ended up becoming friends with two girls that are still two of my best friends to this day. I remember being so nervous. We went out to brunch. I got home from brunch and I was just thinking about all the stupid stuff that I word vomited the entire time. And like those girls took me under their wing. It was almost like a sobriety thing, right? I just told you the story about my first sponsor.
So these two girls were also influencers?
Influencers. Okay. Not sober though, but still great people. But
nerve-wracking though, because you're like, okay, I'm going, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I met them and basically they were the ones that were like, girl, you need to be charging money for this. Girl, you can make money off of this. You can do this. And I was like, oh. And they gave me confidence because it's like the same thing that I just talked about in sobriety. When you're with a group of people that all share a common interest, it kind of like lifts you up, right? So I'm not alone anymore. I have this little pact of friends and I have people to bounce stuff off of like, okay, I just got this email and they want to pay me $5 for 100 pictures. And my friends are like, no, Cait, like you can charge a lot more money for that. And I did. I turned this hobby passion of mine into a side hustle. So it got to a point where like now I get to shoot bathing suit content with my daughter and get paid for it, which is crazy. And I'm not saying that in a braggy way. I'm just saying like, if you told 12-year-old Cait that would be happening in her life one day, she would cry. Like the girl that wore a different bathing suit to the beach every single day is now getting paid to shoot bathing suits with her daughter. Like it's crazy. And it's just, you know, it's something that I absolutely love doing. And I've met so many people. Like I'm not afraid. And I feel like the confidence that it gave me is something that I wouldn't have if I never just jumped into it and started doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and especially like the people that just reach out, right? Like, especially the people that are like cheering you on.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be haters.
Yeah, exactly.
And any given day, if anybody says that they're not a hater, they're lying. I can be a hater. It is what it is. You know, but at some point, so when you went out to brunch with those two, they weren't sober, right? Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
You just didn't tell them.
No, I'm very open.
Okay, so they knew.
They knew.
But it wasn't in your, like, it wasn't included in your Instagram at that point, or
I
it was?
don't think it really was included in my Instagram. It's hard for me to remember. So, like I said, it was more just like pretty outfit pictures. So it didn't feel like I needed to incorporate it in.
So people didn't really know you just yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It was really just like pictures that caught the eye, much like, I guess, TikTok now or Reels.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if they catch your attention within the first 3 seconds, you'll get a like. And then so early on, it was more of that same idea. It
was more of like pictures. Because I will say video, Reel, TikTok, that changed the whole game, right? Because now people just want to see your house and what you're doing with your kids. And you can post a video of your kids saying something funny and it goes viral. At the time, it was like very stage produced. Like, this is what I'm wearing. This is where you can buy it. Like, I'm at a pretty place. This is a pretty location. It's very different today.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It is. It is. And I don't know. I think in my captions, I would write stuff like longer, you know, paragraph long captions. And I remember the first time that I shared about being sober on there, it was just, again, pretty pictures. And I had a couple people reach out and I got to a point where like, I wasn't afraid to tell people I was sober because I started going to a lot of events for influencers and people are drinking. And again, I'm like, I don't want to drink. There's no part of me that wants to drink. I didn't have that obsession anymore. I knew I was a train wreck. I knew if I started drinking, I would lose my marriage, my friends, my, you know, job. It wasn't. Dad would be pissed. Dad would be livid, you know, and probably ask for a refund of all of the money. But yeah, I was weird about talking about it for a little bit, but I feel like I'm not afraid to talk about it now. Yeah. And I have people reach out occasionally, or I'll have people, even if like they're not friends, if they're just followers, like some people will be like, hey, like this inspired me, or, oh my God, I'm sober curious. And I know it's not typical AA big book of like, this is how you can help people post on your Instagram. Like nowhere in the big book does it say that. Tell me if I'm wrong. You know? No, I don't think that. I think, you know, maybe if they do like what is it, the 5th edition? Yeah. Maybe they'll put that in there. Yeah, exactly. But listen, same thing with like, you know, people might reach out and be like, I can't believe you're saying the word AA, you know, bringing up AA. Listen, it's 2024. Exactly. You know? And I'm not recording AA meetings. Like,
right. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And also, whatever. I was about to go down a whole tangent.
Yeah, please.
See, that's growth out of me. All right, so go ahead. Where are we at?
I was just saying, like, promotion rather than attraction.
Attraction rather than promotion. Yep.
Just cut that out,
It's a long day.
But it is. So I'm like not afraid to talk about it now. And I do a lot of stuff sober now too. I started going on these sober vacations. Shameless plug. SVI.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. I was going through my divorce, which we'll backtrack if you would like. But I remember I was going through my divorce and I had a 4-month-old baby at that point and selling the house that we lived in, getting ready to move. And my dad calls me. He's like, hey, dad again, we're going on a sober vacation. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going on a sober vacation.
Kind of busy, Dad.
Right? Kind of. Can't talk right now, getting divorced. And he was like, I'm paying. And I was like, oh. I'm in. Say less.
I'm in.
I'm in.
My schedule just freed up.
Right? Exactly. Yep. So this was January of 2022, I think. And I moved into my house with my daughter. The paint was still not even done in my house. And the next day I was on a flight to Turks and Caicos with 6 of my sober family members, including my father. Mind you, I'm a shell of a person. And I had a baby, like, it was January, so almost a year ago, right? I still have, like, I'm pretty sure I still had, like, the line down my, like, just not feeling myself, right? And these people there wasn't that many young people when I went. These people that were at the resort lifted me up. Like, they were so amazing. And I was like, oh my God. And I hate to, like, compare it to something like the Roundup or Pensy Pot or something like that. Like, you can do as little or as much as you want on these vacations. And I would go and, like, my family was there, right? So we're like jet skis, be back for the 8 p.m. meeting. And these meeting speakers that they brought in were like keynote speakers from all over the world. And it was insane. I remember just sitting there sobbing to the point, talk about attraction rather than promotion again. The next year, I got 7 of my best friends to go that were sober. And, like, when I tell you, my one best friend is just sitting there at the first 8 p.m. meeting, sobbing because she was going through the same thing that I went through, divorce, a year later. And I was like, do you want to go on a sober vacation? She was like, yep. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And it was so amazing. So, like,
wait, did you pay? Hold on.
Here's the plot twist, right?
Pass it on here.
I did not pay for her. I did not pay for her.
Yeah.
But I now, like, promote for them because I love, like, I am truly so passionate about that.
Okay, so you and your sober family members went, and then you reference, like, the people at the resort. So, like, it's obviously a sober retreat type deal.
Oh, let's backtrack.
So the people at the resort are all sober.
So they rent out an entire Club Med or whatever resort it is. Take all of the alcohol out of the resort. It's all sober people from all over the country. This guy started this sober vacation when he was our age, right? And it was just like, I just want to go with my friends and not have to be, like, worried about drunk
phenomenal.
people. Phenomenal. And these people that are on these retreats have been like, they're like, I've been to 45 of these. And I was like, oh my God.
Is it always Turks and Caicos?
No. So they switch it back and forth, East Coast, West Coast. So the second year, I somehow got the 7 friends to go to Puerto Vallarta, which was like an 8.5-hour flight. But it was awesome. And again, same thing. They clear out the whole resort and they have, like, schedules. So you can do, as I said, as little or as much as you want. Like, in the morning, they have meditation, yoga, Al-Anon.
All included.
All included.
I need info.
Trust me, you're gonna want to hear more. And it's amazing. And they're coming up with one soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, spoiler alert, where it will be kid friendly. So let's talk.
I don't want to bring my kids.
I know, that's how I feel every time I go without
But
Luna.
I guess I have to because I just publicly said that I don't want kids.
Sorry, girls. But
yeah, so, like, that's awesome.
Yeah, stuff like that. Getting to do stuff like that sober is, like, amazing. I told you I grew up going to Jamaica and places like that every year with my family. Not really sober. So now that I get to go back and be sober and meet people from all over the world, it's crazy. It's
interesting people.
Interesting people.
Like, we forget about that. Like, there's every single one of us have a story.
Yeah.
And you meet the coolest people that are sober.
I can't even tell you. There was a celebrity there the one time. I was like, oh, wow, crazy. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
So
eventually you did put sober mama
Sober Mama.
In the Instagram bio.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what did that like? Was it like an overwhelming people reaching out? Was it not so much? Does your content now kind of consist of still putting in sobriety or recovery stuff, or what does that look like?
It's a little different. So I told you this briefly, but I'll say the story again because I feel like it's important, because this is what turned me off from saying sober for a little bit. So when I had lived in California, I had met an influencer who I worshipped. Like she's the best, the best. And I went to the same gym as her, and somehow along the line, she was like, we should get drinks. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually sober, but let's get breakfast. Right. And she basically like ran her mouth to everybody at the gym and a bunch of other people. Like my spray tan artist was the one that told me. And she was like, listen, this girl is basically saying to watch out for you because you're sober. And at this point, I'm 9 years sober. And I'm like, hold the phone. Like, what do you mean watch out for me? What am I going to do? Drink your water? Like,
yeah. So now I remember you saying it, but like, I didn't know that you were like 9 years sober.
9 years sober. This isn't like fresh sobriety.
Pretty removed.
Pretty removed. But yeah, so I was just like weird about it, right? And that turned me off from talking about it for a while. But I just got to a point where I was like, this is who I am. Like, I will go to an event. If I meet you in person, one of the first things that's probably going to come up is that I'm sober. So why not have that in my profile? Like, you get what you get and you don't get upset, as we tell Luna, you know?
That's what I tell her. That's what we tell our kids all the time.
All the time. But I don't know. I just put it in there, and it's funny because you're like, has a lot of stuff like come from it. And to be transparent with you, no. Like, I will still get pitches in my email, and it's like, Captain Morgan, come like promote for us. I'm like, what part of my content?
You must have missed the bio.
Yes, exactly. Click the link in the bio. Yeah. But yeah, I just kindly say no to that stuff. But there has been like, it's more beneficial for me to have it in there for the people that are willing to reach out and be like, hey, I'm sober curious. And I'm not making reels every day being like, God grant me the serenity. Like I rarely talk about it. I post about it every year on my anniversary because I think that's huge. And backtrack, this is not related to social media, but this is one of my favorite stories in the entire world. I don't know if you know this, but Luna, my daughter. So you've seen me, I'm pretty tiny, right? So when I was pregnant, I got real big. Like I was not one of the cute pregnant people that was just like tummy. Like it was like everything blew up. And I was like, there is no way that I'm going past 38 weeks. Like I am huge. My due date was March 13th, 2021. And I went past my due date, and Luna showed up 2 days late on, this is where I'll probably cry, my 10-year anniversary. Which is crazy. Yeah, I still get goosebumps when I talk about it. And I remember... So
your daughter's born on your sober date?
Yeah. So it's something that's like really special. And I remember the text from my ex-father-in-law just saying like 10 little fingers, 10 little toes, and 10 years sober. And I was like, oh, like waterworks. And it's crazy though, because I'm like, oh my God. When I talk about stuff happening, like there is no coincidences, right? Like there is like that date is really special to me. And backtrack, the day that I got arrested was March 13th. 2029, right? That was my due date. And my daughter showed up on March 15th, 2021. So 10-year anniversary. Just like crazy. I hate being one of those people of like all the things align, but it is.
I just did a really good job of holding back tears.
I could see it.
I just did a really good job. You didn't have to do that to me.
Girl dads.
No, that's not a coincidence.
No, it's not. And I've had a lot of stuff like that happen. And I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't like, I told you, like, the father of my child will always be the father of my child. He is an amazing dad. We just didn't work out, right? And I will tell you that when we moved to California, I had left all of my people here, right? All of my friends, all of the people that were my support network. And I moved out there and he started drinking, which, again, I can't tell anybody not to drink, right? He was a heroin. So it's like, okay, maybe I can do heroin, you know? Like, maybe I could. I'm not saying I will, but I'm like, I can't like justify that. Drinking is a lot more normalized, right? And
which is wild, by the way, because it still takes out more than anything.
Exactly.
It takes out more people than heroin and
drunk drivers, all this stuff, right? So I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just going to say that when I moved out there, it felt like the rug got ripped out from under me when that happened, right? And what happened was one of the people I got sober with, she was my best friend, right? She got sober with this girl who she would always talk about. And she'll be like, her name's Cait too. So she would always be like, oh, Cait. And I'm like, this other Cait, excuse my language. But I was just like, other Cait. Okay, whatever. She was sober, right? She lived in the same freaking town as me. So when this happened and I'm screaming, crying, living in California alone for 2 weeks with no support system, my best friend calls that girl and I get goosebumps. Like when I talk about stuff not being coincidences, she called that girl. That girl picked me up that night and took me to a meeting. And that girl had like 10 years sober at that point, a very close knit group of friends. Chris, they took me under their wing. Like when I tell you, like, those girls saved my life. And at that point, I was kind of dry in sobriety. See, the emotions. I was really dry. Like I wasn't going to meetings here. And it really forced me to get back into meetings out there. And like this group of girls, we would go to this stupid meeting every Tuesday night. And I tell them all the time, like I got to see them recently. I got to take Luna back to California where she was conceived, but never been. Yeah. And they were the ones that threw me a baby shower. Like when
wow.
Yeah. And they got to meet her. But like, I tell them all the time, like, you guys saved my life. Like, talk about being at a really low point. And that's the cool thing. And like, I hate even having to bring my ex into it. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what happened with us. The moral of that story is me telling you that AA has showed up for me more than anything else in my life. And that's not just AA, that's God. Like, what are the odds that my best friend's best friend takes me in and like these girls basically like got me through probably the darkest part in my sobriety, you know?
Yeah.
So talk about pain.
Yeah. I mean, listen, AA will always answer, right? The problem is that like they always answer, right? Because sometimes I reach out and I'm like, fuck, why'd I just do that? You know? There's never been a time where like if I actually honestly needed somebody or even if someone needed me, and like it's like that weird bond, right? If like one of your girlfriends were to call you right now, you'd probably take the headphones off and be like, I gotta go.
Exactly.
You know, and that's just like what we do.
It is.
Because someone did it for us.
Exactly. And I feel like there's a lot of stigma about like being in service of like, it has to look like you're a greeter or you're making the coffee at a meeting. It's not for me. And I'm sure for you too. Like we have kids, we're parents. Finding my way of being in service is so much different than it was when I was in sobriety first. Like it's answering the phone when I don't want to hear about my friend's breakup for the 20th time. But like, did she just listen to me talk about the breakup?
Know that you're talking about her?
Sorry, boo. But did she listen to me talk about my breakup for the 800th time, like a year ago? Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So
I feel like we could absolutely talk forever.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know where we're at in the story at this point.
I don't know either. I'm like looking at your bullet points. We got it.
Nobody on the podcast knew I had bullet points. All right. I have a cheat sheet behind the camera. So we talked about social media. Let's jump here. So what's it look like today? I mean, I know we touched on it a little bit, right? But Luna's what now? 3?
3. Yeah.
How full is life or how many hours are not left in the day when you finally get a second to like relax? And then we'll end with, like, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of all of it?
Yeah.
Obviously being a mother, right? And probably, ruining Luna's first drink. I get it. But what's a life look like today?
Life looks like, let's fast forward because this is a different part of the story. I talked to you about the sober vacations, right? I talked about that house that I moved into. So this is another crazy God thing. This house went up on the market in Paoli, right? And I was one of 72 people who saw it. There was 18 offers on the house. Why did I want this house? Because my best friend who lives across the street, who also has been through a divorce and has a little girl, lives there, right? There was 18 offers on the house. I was not supposed to get it. I was not the highest. Wrote the letter, wrote everything. I got the house. So now I get to live across the street from one of the people that I got sober with, who also has a little girl. And we live on such a good street. Like, it feels like a community. Like when I tell you, and I'm not just BSing you or saying this, like life is beyond my wildest dreams, right? Like, am I rich? Definitely not. Do I work at HQ? No, like I don't. I have a job. I get to do my social media on the side. Like, I'm happy.
Are you still hanging on to being at HQ?
Yeah, I'm not salty. I still got it. Just kidding. But I'm just saying, like, my life now is like, okay, I work. I get to do social media. I co-parent, which at the time I was like, this is the worst thing in the entire world. It's amazing. Like, I'm very close with the father of my child. He is an amazing dad. She is so lucky. He started dating somebody else who I'm also friends with. Like, in what world are you friends with the person that is dating your ex-husband? And it's just crazy.
Probably a sober person.
A sober person is right? And I get to like FaceTime her when she's with her dad. And I get her half the time. And when I don't have her, like, because you have 2 twins at the same time. Woo! I don't know how you did it.
I'm in therapy.
I'm in therapy too. But she is, it's funny. Like, I went out to dinner with one of my friends who's a Gen Zer, and they don't have filters, and I love them. But he's like, I'm really glad that you had Luna. Like, she's your purpose in life. And I was like, okay, like more than that, but mom number one. So mom number one, sobriety number one, because I wouldn't be a mom without that. So yeah, my life is pretty damn good. And there's like still struggles, right? Like, I don't know, people relapse, people die, pets die. My cat died like a month ago. Just gotta sneak that in there. And like, life happens, right? Life never stopped happening for me. It's just, I know how to deal with it a little bit more gracefully, I feel like, each year. A little bit is the key word there. Like, still can have my crazy girl moments, but I am a person that's like confident today. And I'm not afraid to be who I am, who is a sober mom, who's an influencer, works full time, owns a house, and still Canine Girl 99, like still that same girl.
Yeah. I mean, listen, normal's not a thing.
Normal's
right?
boring.
But at the end of the day, right, it's all about what does it look like, when I'm by myself.
Exactly.
There's been times where I've been like really, really, really broke and dog shit happy.
Yeah.
And there's been times where I've been doing really well on paper and absolutely out of my mind.
Yep.
Stone cold sober in both of them. And it's like, what do I want to do? Do I want to do the work and be happy? Or do I want to like just be metal on metal?
Yeah.
And just like you said, or referenced at one point, right? Like, or just be dry.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
It is.
Because at any given time, like me dry, that's very painful.
Very painful. Yeah. And I went through that when I was going through my divorce. Like, I was trying to focus on me, but I forgot to put AA back in that. And I will say, like, over the past 3 years, I got back into it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the missing puzzle piece. So it's very important because as you just said, like, being dry, it's painful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we'll sit in it too. We'll sit in it.
Well, I like thrive in it, and until I don't,
yeah,
and that's the craziest thing. And that's like been a reoccurring thing in my sobriety where it's like, you hear people talk about like peaks and valleys, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I just like, I thrive on like, I know I'm going up and down at all times, but it's like at some point it's got to level off.
Yeah.
Right. And it just hasn't yet.
Exactly.
But what has stayed constant is like, as corny as this is, I don't know why I still preference it with corny, because it's not. But God's like has been constant this entire time. And my perception on God and my idea of God is like transformed over the years, right?
Me too.
But yeah, I mean, there's been times where I've been doing really, really well and not going to the number of meetings that I was going to. And then there's been times where I was doing like not as well and going to every single meeting and trying to sponsor every single person because I thought that that's what I had to do. And really what I needed to do was like actually see a therapist,
Exactly.
So like, and again, that could be a whole nother podcast as well. Yeah. So anything else you want to say before we shut it down? Because again, I feel like if we don't, just like our drinking, like if
we're going to keep talking,
we're just going to keep going.
We'll talk for hours. I'm just going to say thank you. I'm proud of you for doing this. This is awesome. And like I said, like having a place where people can go and listen to this and attraction rather than promotion. This is it. So it's going to give a lot of people hope. And I'm excited that I got to be on it and be a part of it. Don't forget about me when you get big. Okay. Well, I got to pass you first. So, oh my God, my buddy's going to kill me. So, if you like what we had to say, we're on Instagram, Pain W Purpose, or at Pain W Purpose. We are on YouTube, Pain with a Purpose Podcast, and Apple and Spotify, Pain with a Purpose Podcast. Good. Like, comment, subscribe. Is that what I would say? Smash that like button. Smash that like button. We definitely appreciate the support. It keeps me going, keeps us going. And we will see you for the next episode. So thank you again. Thank you.